Hi, everybody, and a very warm welcome, as always, to the fourth Pro webinar. It's lovely to have you with us this evening. Now, look, we've got an awful lot to get through tonight, so we're going to push on fairly quickly with it. I'm just, if you'll excuse me leaning over, I'm just going to put the comments on so I can actually see if any comments come up. Oh, there's loads already. There we go. So, hi everybody. Yep, welcome along. The aim of tonight is to bring together everything, to a large extent, that we've done in the first three Pro webinars. Now, I'm going to make a comment just before we crack on with this. Webinar 1 and 2, they were fine because we were actually teaching you something physical. You could go away and, you could learn some new chords. You could learn this 2-5-1 chord sequence, etc. Webinar 3, we had a minority of people, and we are talking a small number of people who, quite honestly, didn't get the webinar. But in fact, me and Andy have discussed it. That was probably the most important of all the webinars. And I know that by the time you've watched this evening, I think you're going to understand what webinar 3 was all about if you didn't understand it at the time. Because webinar 3 was about stamping your own authority on that piece of music. And in a strange sort of way, what we're trying to do is get you away from that piece of music as it's written in front of you. That's what that was all about. So hopefully you've all received the little booklet, and there was some amendments sent out today as well. So you should hopefully have a copy of the music in front of you, if that's at all possible. So if you haven't, and we need to put some comments on, we can show you example 2 and 3. But just to start with, I'm just going to spend just a few minutes on example 1. Example 1 is there because that is typically the sort of lead sheet you would find in a music book. If anything, it's probably a little bit better than you would often get because it has got some elements of sort of timing on it. But I'm going to attempt to play it exactly as it's written. And then I'm just going to give you an example that if all you can achieve from tonight is what I'm about to show you, then that's great. The rest of it may be a longer term project for some of you, but stick with us because it'll be well worth it. So the first thing I would do, and I think I speak for Andy as well, when you're looking at a new arrangement like this, is what style are we going to use for it? Strictly speaking, it's a 4/4 piece of music, so reality says I could use any 4/4 rhythm, and I could play it as a gentle bossa nova, I could play it as a rumba, I could play it as a blues piece, I could play it as a cha-cha if I really wanted to, but we've chosen to do it in the more traditional style, which is a nice laid back, can I use the word sleazy? Yeah, am I allowed to use that on a pro webinar? Yes, you know what I mean, that sort of nightclub, late night, I'm going to use sleazy. That type of swing rhythm there. So we're using Genos 2 tonight. I've chosen a style called jazz organ ballad. And what I've done is I've pre-prepared 4 sounds. So we've got a jazz guitar, we've got a jazz organ, because that tends to always fit in with this sort of music. In C, I've put a nice little muted solo trumpet there. Beautiful sound, that one. And then we finish up on D. We've got a nice sort of smoky tenor sax type sound. So if I was just to use the jazz guitar and play this exactly as your example, I hope I can do this. The sheet, if you're looking at it, this is how it goes. it's a bit pedestrian, isn't it? It's lumbering a little bit. It's yeah, it is. It's very square. Good word there, Andy. So look, I'm going to use the same sound, the same rhythm, and I'm just going to play that one line again. This is what I would love you to be able to achieve, if nothing else, tonight, and that's to play this. Listen in bar 2, I'm going to play the chord first and delay the first note coming in. The alarm bells ring for me on the last bar of line 1. We've got 4 crotchets. And when I see that and I'm playing a swing piece, the alarm bells will ring because it is just so wooden. I'm having to nod my head to keep in that sort of tie because it doesn't sort of come natural. But this is, in my imagination now, what I'd love you to be able to achieve. I hope you can hear the difference. I'm actually playing the same notes. I've put a couple of little bits in that I am going to explain to you how we've done it. But that's what I mean about breaking free from the notes, but you're using the notes there as the guidance. So look, what we're going to do is move swiftly on to example 2, because that's really when the magic starts to happen. If you have a look at that first line, we've changed the F major into an F major 7. It's a much richer, it's a more interesting chord voicing than just playing that basic triad. So with just the chord of F, if we do the major 7, it just sounds different, doesn't it, straight away. It's one extra note, and I'm sure everybody watching can manage that. If you look in bar 2, what we've done our old friend, the 2-5-1. Now, we haven't got time tonight to go back into detail over all these things, but we did do these in the first couple of webinars. And the 2-5-1, you basically have to look at your destination chord. Well, the chord we're going to is D minor 7. The 2 is an E, and the 5 is an A. So we need an E-type chord and an A-type chord. Because the destination chord is a minor, the second will always be a minor 7th with a flattened 5th. Sounds more daunting than it really is. If you know E minor 7, just find which is the 5th, it's the B, and flatten it. So there it is. Then it goes to A7, and then it goes to D minor 7. And that will just give those first 2 bars a real lift. Let's just play them through with our changes in. It's much more tasty. This is professional sort of chording level. So if you can do this, absolutely brilliant. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you might have noticed I'm flicking a few notes, if you want to call it that. I'm putting some ornaments in. And these, let's put the overhead camera on so you can see us. That one, so that you can actually see the little keyboard above there. So instead of just playing in that first 2 bars, what I'm going to do before I go to that very first note of A, the minimum I'm going to do is flick the note which is a semitone before it, so the A flat. Now, if you're watching that sort of keyboard, the mock keyboard on top, on the video, you'll hardly see it being pressed because we don't want to hear it like this. That's not what we want. What we want is... And then I can do exactly the same as I come down. But what I did this time, I actually did 2 notes before the A. It will take some practice, because when you first do it, you will play. But really, we need it quicker than that. So it's. Okay, let's put it all together, and I'll carry on to the next bit, and you'll hear me do it once more at the end of bar 3 as we go into bar 4. Now, when I did that one, I deliberately emphasized it a little bit more, so you could actually hear the individual notes then. Then if you look ahead where we've got F major 7 to E7, those notes are going up in thirds. And that's, for me, that's about the limit, but you can actually sort of play every note in between. And you get a really nice effect there. So let's see now if we can put the whole of that first line together. Now, what we've changed here is instead of just playing a C7 at the end of this couple of bars, we've made it a C7 augmented. It's such a slight change. Augmented means you raise the fifth. With the minor 7th flattened fifth, we flatten the fifth. With the augmented, you raise the fifth by a semitone. So if you just take your C7 chord in its standard inversion and you move the G up to the G sharp, all 7th chords feel like they're taking you somewhere. The augmented feels even more like it's giving you more of a tug to get onto the next chord. So if we just do those 4 chords, if I just play a C7, and now we do the same sequence, but with the C7 augmented. It's really leading you into that next chord there. And when we do that C7 augmented, because we've held a note here for 2 bars, it's starting to... boring's not the right word, but we need a little spark before we go back into the main theme. So I'm going to suggest a little run with the right hand. And what I'm going to suggest is that you just run down the notes of that C7 augmented chord. So let's have a look at the notes. We've got G sharp, B flat, C and E. So if I invert it, and I'll come down from the G sharp to the E, to the C, to the B flat, and then that will take us nicely, drop down a semitone to the A to start again. I'm going to do it at speed in a minute, but what I am going to say to you, you've got a choice here. The chord actually spans 2 beats, so you could make each one of the notes a half beat note and do it. Or you could, if you're really daring, leave it all till the 4th beat. Depends how quick you can do that run. Personally, I love when it's done a little bit quicker, but obviously you've got to work within your limitations. So maybe start doing them as half beat notes. So let's do it both ways. Let's just do those couple of bars. It's a lovely little run, and there's nothing magical about it. We are just using the same notes we've got in the left hand on the right hand. Now listen if I risk it a bit more and leave it till the very last beat. It's probably more in keeping with the theme of the tune, the style of the tune. But yeah, nice little run there. Then we get to, on the third line, we're going to jump forward a little bit. Just before we go into the middle eight, on the first version, we had F to B flat and back to F. Standard chord progression. What we've done here is just make them seventh chords. It just emphasises and gives it a little bit more edge. It's what happens in the next bar that's quite special. Our destination chord is D minor 7. And we're not going for a 2-5-1 this time. We're going for a chromatic rundown with your chords. So I'm going to fit 2 chords in before that. So if we're on a D and we go up 1 semitone, 2 semitones, that takes us to E. So that's why we've said let's play an E7. Then it descends to the semitone down, the E flat 7, and then down to the D minor 7. And this really is a great intro to that middle 8 section. So what we're going to do it from bar 7. I'm going to put my little run in, and then I want you to hear that chromatic descent on the chords. Again, you might need to practice going E7, E flat 7, D minor 7. But actually, that's all coming down in semitones as well. So it's not as difficult as it appears, but practice it a few times on its own. So I'm going to pick it up from bar 7, listen for that little run on the C7 augmented, and then listen to this lovely chromatic run just before we go into the middle 8. Just lovely. I love that. And you probably notice as well, when I hit the D minor 7, I didn't try to come in exactly on the beat with the right hand. I sort of laid back a bit with the right hand. And that, again, immediately gives you that more laid back feel to the piece. This is just a little aside, but if you really want to know what we're trying to convey here, do yourself a favour, either immediately after the webinar or maybe at some point tomorrow, have our piece of music in front of you and then go to YouTube and look up Ray Charles, who had the big hit with Georgia on My Mind, and just listen to his voice, which is his voice is replacing the melody note that we're playing. I'll tell you now, I did it earlier on today. There are some bars where he doesn't sing anything until halfway through the bar. He's really, really held back. But the chords are still playing in time and the backing is still in time. But he always finishes the bar or the phrase back in time again. And it's this sort of laid back that really sort of makes this sort of music. Now, I'm going to introduce you to something new, which will appear on the next line. So it's the line starting bar 19. And this is called a tritone substitution. Oh, yes. Now, again, and I'm going to reiterate, a lot of these terms sound more daunting than they really are. A tritone substitution, if you can count to 6, you can do it. It is as simple as that. And what is a tritone substitution? You can only do a tritone substitution with a dominant 7th chord. Or, as you would know it, just a standard 7th chord. So you can't do it with a minor 7th, can't do it with major 7th, just a 7th chord. So what we've got here, if I can just, Andy, could you just pass me variation 1 again? So as we go into this middle section, and it's in bar 20, on the original copy, I just needed to check that we had done that on the original. In bar 20, it goes F to G7. I think I'm right, aren't I? Yep, F to G7. And in example 2, we've now got F to D flat 7. How did that happen? Well, D flat 7 is the tritone substitute of G7. And how do we know that? I said if you can count to 6. So that originally we had a G. If we literally count up 6 notes, 6 semitones from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we end up on D flat. So D flat 7 can be used instead of G7. Now, disclaimer. This is going to fail more times than it's going to work. But when it works, it's magic. And that's why we do it. Okay, so don't think every time you see G7, oh, I'll play D flat 7 instead. It's not going to work every time, mainly due to clashes with the melody. Okay? And I don't want to get too technical here, but I just want to explain why we can do this method. If we look at a G7 chord, the 2 most important notes in that G7th are the 3rd and the 7th. The 3rd distinguishes major to minor, because if I left that 3rd note out, it could be a B flat. So it could be a minor chord. Having the standard 3rd in means we're major. The 7th, obviously, is what gives it the 7th value. So they're the 2 important notes. Now look at me playing D flat 7. Lo and behold, we've still got a B in and we've still got an F. So those 2 key notes appear in both chords. But here's an I think it's interesting. What was the dominant 7th has now become the 3rd, and what was the 3rd has now become the dominant 7th. But that doesn't matter. All you need to know is you can swap those 2 chords over. So, if we just do it without the rhythm for a minute, from bar 19. Ooh, it's tasty. And it happens again on the last bar of that line. So we've got A minor 7, and I'm just checking what we had on the original. We had a D7. So let's go up 6 from D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Takes us to A flat. So D7 could be substituted for A flat 7, and it works in this case because there isn't a clash on the right hand. This one is my favourite one. So I'm going to take it from the F major 7 in the bar before. It's lovely. So tritone substitutions are, you can't do them very often, but when you do them, as I said, the effect can be quite dynamic, really. And all I want to point out, as a final thought, if you go on to the next line, starting on bar 24, we've got a G minor 7 to a C7 to an F major 7. That just proves that Hoagy Carmichael, when he wrote it, knew what a 2-5-1 was, because there is a perfect 2-5-1 that he's already put into the piece. So we've done a lot here. In sort of 25 minutes, we've gone from a very pedestrian style first line We've gone on to example 2. Now, we've put these 2-5-1s, so we've put a couple of 2-5-1s. We've done a little chromatic run with the chords, and we've put 2 tritone substitutions in. If you can only manage a couple of those, it doesn't matter. You can always develop at a later date to, being a little bit more adventurous. Whatever you do in terms of changing those chords, it really is going to lift the music. But without trying to sound boring, the thing that lifts the music the most is this. If you can free yourself up with that right hand and combine that with some pro level chords, then your playing will take one almighty leap. It's not just a small leap, we're talking a huge jump here. Yes, as I said, you may have to do it in stages. But let's have a look what else we can do. I'm just going to show you another couple of runs that we could maybe put in. Let's go back to the first line. Do you remember that boring bar that had 4 crotchets in it? What about if we just ignored the first part of the melody? So we've got G minor 7 to C7. The melody goes... What about if we actually ran down a G minor 7 on those first 2 beats and then picked up the melody when we get to the C7? You can do them, because you've got 2 beats, we can do them as half beat notes. Okay. You could, if you want to take it a little bit further, when you get to the C7 and the A, hold the A on for 1.5 beats and then just make the last one a half beat. We've completely changed the bar then. So let me just play the first line again. Then I'm going to show you a little ending, and then we're going to put the whole thing together. So this is the first line. Watch for this little run, and watch for these where we've got thirds and we're just rolling between the notes. And what I want you to understand, again, you won't hear them as individual notes. You're just going to hear a slur from one note to the other. Okay, so here we go. First line goes like this. Let's put the chord down first. Here's our other little run. Wow. Even I sort of get... I get pleasure out of this because of what we've actually achieved in a short space of time there. Just going to take you right to the last couple of bars. F7 to B flat 7, and we finish on an F major 7 for the same reason we started with an F major 7. It's got that little bit more interesting tone to it. So what I'm going to suggest we do is when we get to the ending, how about do a little run on an F major 7? So F major 7 is always an easy one to remember because it spells face, F-A-C-E. Okay? This is where inversions come in. I know you probably get fed up with us going on about these things, but this is why they're important. If we invert the notes of an F major 7, we could do a little run. Let's start on the E, go up to the F, back to the E, C, A. Doesn't sound much when you play it like that, but if we go, it gives us a nice little run at the end there. And then what I'm going to do, just a little nod to the melody. Right at the end, I'm just going to go, which is the Georgia. So we'll put that on at the end there. So I think it's my turn to put all of this together now. Going to try and use the different sounds. When I get to the middle 8, I just want you to pay, I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit, but I want you to pay attention to the phrasing. It's nothing like what he's written there, but I'm still playing the same notes as he's written there. And the other thing before I just do this, I also want you to have a listen to this, and then when Andy gets to his performance of his piece, you should and you will hear differences between the two of us, even though we're in essence working from the same copy. And I'd like to think if 10 of you sat down and played this, there would be 10 totally different performances of it. Just because I'm showing you a run in that position doesn't mean you have to do it there. You might try to employ the same technique, but somewhere else in the piece. You might not flick all the notes that I'm flicking. The choice is yours. All we can do is keep feeding you the information. And if a few bits go in each time, brilliant. That's what we're asking for. So I'm going to use a little intro. I will start with the jazz guitar, but then we'll move on to the organ sound. I'm going to use the mute trumpet in the middle section, and we'll finish with the saxophone. I'm going to use the short ending, by the way, because it's the right length to put this little run in that I'm doing there. So here we go. This is my vamped up version of Georgia on My Mind. There we go. So that is putting it all together. I chose to do my little run in a different place, so I apologise for that if you were waiting for it at the end of the first line. And that's what's great about this, because you can eventually have that confidence and that freedom to do these. So hope you enjoyed that. If any of you subscribe to the magazine, there is an article in the magazine that's going out either this weekend or the first couple of days of next week. It'll be ready. There is an article in there about tritone substitution. It's worth mastering. Like I said, and I wasn't being facetious when I said it, but if you can count 6 up from the 7th you're on, then you're in. Basically, you can do it. I've missed explaining a couple of bits out, because when Andy comes on, I'm going to leave it to him to explain. I've left him something to do. So I really hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope, as you can see, this is now putting all 3 previous webinars all together, and I'm going to go and lay in a darkened corner and let Andy take you through example 3. And you're in for a treat with this, because there's some even more little things. And by the way, I know I'm blabbing on, but Andy's come up with a totally different ending to the one I've just done. And this is where I'm talking about the word freedom. As long as you understand the techniques, because when you watch professional players, it looks cleverer than it is. And I shouldn't be saying that, should I? But basically, all we've got is a filing cabinet in our brain full of little licks and ideas and chord sequences, and you just sort of pluck them out. I think I'm right, aren't I? We learn these tricks, and the older I get, I can't always find them in my brain. But that's what you do. It's like when we've talked before about playing blues. Blues looks amazing, but actually you have in your brain probably 7 or 8 different phrases that you use over and over and again, but you mix and match. And that's basically what we're doing here. So if you just give us 30 seconds to bring in Mr. Andy Carville, and I'll just say my cheerios at the end of the webinar. Thanks for watching that bit. There you go, Andy.
Thank you very much indeed. Marvellous. All yours. Lovely. Oh. Right. Well, good evening, all. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to my little section. Wasn't he brilliant? That's fantastic, Paul. That was very, very good indeed. How do I get this up just a little bit? Because I'm always told off for speaking too quietly. So there we go. Good. Okay. Excellent. I think Paul's little section there contained all of the most important elements that we're talking about tonight. And for me, what this is about, Paul mentioned phrasing, mentioned imagination and freedom. And that actually is some key words there that distinguish a rather pedestrian stroke square performance against a, if you like, more professional performance. So all of these examples, including the one I'm about to have a closer look at, are ideas. You don't have to play them exactly as they're written. In fact, we don't want you to really play them exactly as they're written. We want you to have that freedom to put your own interpretation. Paul mentioned phrasing. Phrasing's got a more way out brother called syncopation. And did you attach the video, Paul? Oh, okay. Well, Paul's going to put up a video. Yeah, he's going to put it on tomorrow, where we talked about blues playing. Actually, we actually did a video about blues playing, and I stumbled across that video today on YouTube. We did it some while ago, and I'd sort of forgotten all about it, if I'm honest. But it does go into this right-hand freedom. So just to emphasise a couple of points that Paul made, the bar structure basically has to stay the same, but you don't have to. In fact, it's best not to play the notes exactly as written, because the result, as Paul started off with, if I can, by the way, this is a new instrument to me, so I believe it or not, I've only played a Genos very briefly, so I might be pushing some wrong buttons here. So if things go horribly wrong, I do apologise. So Paul played the... It's very square, and you're much better to have a bit of looseness in the right hand. That's what we're really trying to achieve. Now, what I've done with example 3 here is I've actually written in some of that looseness. You can't really do it. So this is only a very brief example of the sort of things that we're talking about. I think I think quite importantly, you should be playing this differently. That's really what I'm trying to say. The first difference here is I've actually written in a little introduction. It's just a small introduction. It's got some dotted quavers and a semi-quaver phrase, which actually you'll see will crop up quite often in this example 3, and it's trying to loosen the right hand. That's actually what we're trying to do. So I'm just using the organ sound. I think I'll just slow the tremolo down so you can hear it a bit clearer. So this. Now, in previous videos, I can't remember whether it was Pro Seminar 2 or I can't remember when we did it, but Paul did a section about using an F7 diminished chord as a leading chord, and I've done that there in the second bar. So we've got an F major 7, a D minor 7, the F sharp diminished, which leads to the G minor 7. The C7 being the 5th leads you into the melody section. Just following up what Paul said about using a C7 augmented. That would also fit very nicely at the end of that introduction there. You could either go C7 to the C augmented or just play C augmented. So that would sound like this. Just a different sound. Just a different sound. And the element of freedom is you can choose which one you prefer. If you like the augmented, try that. If you like the C7, use that. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. And all of these things are building our own individual arrangement. That's really what we're talking about here. So I've written in here what Paul was doing, and that's slurring on that very first bar of the melody. In effect, it's bar 5, where the F major 7 is. And I've written it. Don't play it like that. That won't work very well. Play it quicker. That's what you need to do. Paul's just reminding me. This is written in a way that you can read. And this is why lots of sheet music is written in this very simple way. It's because it's easier to read, but lacks a lot of this sort of feeling, this phrasing that we're talking about. So that triplet, it's a quaver triplet written, is much quicker than that. It's that sort of thing. Now, I just wanted to point out a couple of chords in here, which are actually coming up thick and fast, that Paul didn't mention. And you'll see a big difference in example 1 and 2 and 3. We've got an F7 built in here. Where did that come from? Well, believe it or not, that F7 is a bit more of an advanced 5-1. You're looking now and saying, well, hang on a second, F7 is the 5th of it's the 5th of B flat, so it should go to a B flat chord. It's not. It's going to a G minor 7 chord. But it works. So why does that work? In some previous videos, we've spoken about relative minors. As a very quick reminder, a relative minor or a relative major you can find, instead of counting 6, you count 3. So if I have B flat and I go down 3 semitones, I found the relative minor, which is G. So B flat and G minor are very closely related. Suddenly you can see a link here. We're going from F7 to a G minor 7. So whilst it's not as strong as moving to a B flat chord, it is still related and it's still a form of a 5-1. Another way of doing it would be to actually change that G minor 7 chord to a B flat chord. That will also work. So let me just do that. There's the F7. Here's a B flat. It still works. I personally prefer the G minor 7. That's why I've left it in there. But there you go.
I was just going to say I prefer the B flat.
Oh, there you go. You see, Paul prefers the B flat. That's fine. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's you pays your money and takes your choice, but at least you've got a choice. That's the key thing. So coming thick and fast, because straight after that G minor 7 is an E flat 7, which actually is a B flat minor in example 1. Okay, so where did the E flat 7 come from? Well, it came from two places. If we actually look at a B flat minor chord, which, if you want to play it there, B flat, D flat, and F. Okay? And if I play an E flat 7 chord, you'll see there's there's two shared notes there. The B flat and the D flat are shared in both of them. So there is a sort of relationship there with the B flat minor. But actually, where it comes from is another chromatic run. And I haven't finished it off, because after that E flat 7, you could put an E7, which leads to the F major 7. Now, I didn't want to put it in there because it's a little bit harder to play. But if you did this, from the F7 this is, it sort of works. So that E flat 7 is sort of a very nice lead in chord to the F major 7. I hope this is all making sense, and I know there's a lot to take in this particular session. We've also written some extra phrases in here, and that really is what example 3 is all about. So example 2 is just the more advanced chords. Example 3 is the advanced chords with some extra phrases. Okay, let's look at the first part of the melody. We've got that little run, and you'll notice I've put a little extra couple of notes into the second bar of the melody where the E minor 7 flat 5 is. Very simple. Now, to be honest, you've got 1,001 different choices there. I've kept it relatively simple, again, just because it's easy to read. But you could do all sorts of things. How about a bit more of an advanced version? Where are all these notes coming from? And it's exactly what Paul talked about in his section. It's all related to the chord notes. So it's the notes that you're playing with this hand transferred up here to make the melody line a bit more interesting. So that I've got the E minus, I'm going up to the B flat, which is the B flat out of the E minor 7 flat 5. Oh, an extra note there. Well, where's that come from? It's come from my D minor 7. A, C. Well, there's me A, C there. Notes taken out of the F major 7 chord. C, A, up to the E. And here's just another little phrasing trick, which is used all the time, very common. Repeating notes. In other words, instead of just going, it's a tritone substitution. Now, I did a different little phrase there. If I'm honest with you, I prefer Paul's little phrase on that C7 augmented. I prefer that, but I just ran down the notes to the C sharp in the C augmented. More repeated notes. Here's a new little phrase. Now, Paul used the word sleazy at the beginning. I'm not sure whether this is sleazy, but generally this piece of music is, to my ears and my way of thinking, quite a bluesy sort of piece of music, especially in this sort of style. So here, leading into the middle section, I've put an F7, and then this little phrase with the B flat 7, and I've just copied the notes leading into the middle section. So I've got the F7 and I'm doing an E flat. I could repeat them. Yeah? So these are just ideas. This is only one way of playing this piece of music. There is 1,000 different ways. Perhaps I'm exaggerating there, but there's hundreds of different ways that you could do this. Paul made a very, very good suggestion. Go and listen to the Ray Charles version on YouTube. His phrasing is quite way out. As Paul said, he doesn't start singing till halfway through some of the bars. But you'll find lots of different versions of Georgia on My Mind with different people playing it who will all phrase it in a completely different way. Sometimes they'll be on the beat, sometimes they'll be off the beat, sometimes they're between the beats. All sorts of different options. Okay, so I hope you got the bit about tritone substitutions, because there's 3 examples in here. 2 of them are the same. We've got the top bit there where the A minor 7 drops down to the A flat 7 to the G7, and it does that twice in the piece of music, a little bit further down in the second time through. And then you've got this D flat 7. Now, if I'm really honest with you, I'm not 100% convinced about the D flat 7. It's correct. It is technically correct. Actually, as I do it there, it sounds quite good. But anyway, that's the G7, which is in example A. You can choose. It's up to you. If you want to repeat the middle section, you could do it one time through with the G7 and one time through with the D flat 7. Again, you've got those different options available to you. Paul did all sorts of different extras and little bits and pieces in the middle here. But there are so many different things you could do. Let me come up with a different introduction, just off the top of my head, only based around chord notes. These are all chord notes, apart from the little run on G minor 7, which goes... G minor 7 before the main tune starts. And that's because, chord notes are the easiest way of doing it, but you can also just take notes from a scale. Which scale? Well, the tune's in the key of F, so that's a great place to start. And all we've got there is a G note, which obviously matches with the chord, and it's in F scale as well. The A note, which is from the F scale, to the B flat note, which is from the F scale and is in the G7, and the C note, which is from the F scale. So they're all going to sort of work, and a lot of this is trial and error. If you do some really weird and wacky things, they won't work. try them. Try it with a different feel. So let me just do a little using the rhythm here. So there's the basic chord pattern: F major 7, D minor 7, F sharp diminished, G minor 7 to the C7. So let's do this. Where did all that come from? It's just the chord notes. That's one pattern of chord notes that I've written out there, but there are thousands of patterns of chord notes. I could just do a little F major 7. Exactly what Paul did earlier. It's just the notes of F major 7, starting on the A, F, E, C. Then I've got a D minor 7. Let's do the same there. F sharp diminished, and a G minor 7. So I'm just transferring the notes I'm playing here to notes here. That's one option that I've written out, but there are thousands more that you can choose from. So get to know your chord notes. Don't think of C as just, well, it's the notes of C, E, and G. Think of them in this hand as well. It's a great help, because actually, and we're going to some different places here that I wasn't actually thinking of going to, but if I wanted to put some chords into this hand, all I'm going to do is transfer. To my different ending here, which is, I mentioned chromatic runs earlier, and the ending here starts on an A flat chord and it just runs down chromatically, A flat to G to F sharp to F, and it ends on the F chord. You could of course make the F and F major 7 just to make it a little bit more interesting. So the ending, I've gone back to the organ sound here. Something along those lines. I actually doubled up the bars there, but it's this sort of. It's just a very, very effective ending. Well, I think, Paul, that's all I'm going to say. So Paul covered all the important stuff in his section. It was really, really good. And I've just perhaps put a few more embellishments in there. But a few things. Think about your phrasing. and try and sound like you. I mean, I don't know whether I sounded different when Paul was playing. I think it does. It does to me. And that's why one player doesn't sound like another player. That's why Oscar Peterson sounded very different from Errol Gardner and all of those sort of great players. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that a little bit interesting, and I'm just going to hand you back to Paul for his closing words.
Andy, thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks as always, Andy. Look, if you're all okay for sort of 5 minutes or so, I've just listening to Andy sort of inspired me to come up with different ideas. You know, I'm listening to Andy play, and sort of a common thing that you could do. Look where you can repeat a phrase. That can be really, really effective. So just right at the beginning of the tune, look. All we're doing is playing exactly the same notes, but an octave higher. It's almost like an echo of the original phrase. That can be really, really nice. So obviously you need that space to be able to do it. Well, we've got a 1-beat note followed by a 3-beat, so we've got plenty of time to go. And the other one that just came to me while Andy was playing, we're starting from end of the just coming out of the middle 8, so it goes like this. And normally we've written it as there's a strange thing that sometimes if you stay on the same note, it can create a sort of suspense before you go back into the main theme. So if you look there, we've got the A minor 7. So we've got a lot of C's in that bar. Let's just try and stay on C in the next bar as well for the G minor 7 and the C7. But don't just hold the note, actually sort of phrase it in time with the rhythm. So if I take you again, coming out of the middle 8, it's another great little idea there. Somebody's asked which style they would use on a Korg PA5X. To be honest, off the top of my head, I can't think, but you need the slow swing. I think there is one called Slow Swing, and that would work. There's also one called Duke's Ballad on a PA5X. That's a nice little style, but you're looking for that sort of slow, laid-back sort of swing sound there. Okay, and the final one, we've both talked about this tritone substitution. And all I wanted to show you, if I just put this back on piano, and this is one we talked about the other day, and I think this, above anything, will highlight how effective this can be. I think we all know the tune Misty. And Misty actually starts with a 2-5-1. And I'm going to play it in E flat. So it starts F minor 7. Oh, sorry. Let's take the left hand off there. So it's F minor 7. And then it goes to B flat 7. Oh, sorry. I've forgotten the tune now. And then down to the E flat. So it's a 2-5-1. It's there somewhere, yeah. So that second chord, the B flat 7, we could do a tritone substitution on that. So what's going to fit? So we go 6 up from B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. E, E7. It seems so unlikely. It doesn't seem to make sense. But actually, when you play it, oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. Now that's it. It breaks all the rules really, because as Andy's pointed out, we're playing a G natural here, but we've actually got a G sharp in the left hand. But it works. And that little bit of magic there is why we try to do these tritone substitutions. So, look, summarise. We appreciate that there are a lot of people watching. This is a record number of people signed up for the webinar. Of course, they can't all be on live with us, but I think we've had nearly 50 people subscribe to this webinar. There will be people of all different standards out there. We are aware of that, and that's why I said right at the beginning, if you only for now can play from example 1, but put some of that freedom of phrasing in it, that's the first step. If you can add some, ideally all, of the extra chords that we put in, you might find some that we haven't done. You know, that's what, as Andy said, that's what it's all about. If you can put some of the extra chords in, that's your next practice point. If you can get on to the advanced version in 3, then you're well on the road. You're well on the road. The real test will come. We could all read this and, I suppose, learn it parrot fashion. So we can all do those chord changes in Georgia on My Mind. The real test comes when you pick your other favourite piece of music. Can you apply these rules to another piece of music? And that's probably the ultimate step. But I say this always, don't expect it to happen immediately, because it won't. It is practice. Yeah, it's that dreaded word. It's practice. I did speak to somebody the other day, and I don't mean this in a critical way, but I said, how are you getting on with the blues? Because they'd ordered the blues book from us. And he said, oh yeah, I understand it now. And I said, okay, so you've read the book, you understand it, but have you actually tried to put your hands on the keys and play it? Not yet. I think you see the point I'm trying to make. You can understand how to do a 2-5-1. You can understand how to do a tritone substitution, but it's only when you actually get in front of the keyboard and you actually physically do it, will I allow you to tell me that you can do it, because that's the proof of the pudding, as it were. Andy said there's been a lot to digest in this. You may want to watch this video back, you know, as many times as you want, really. You may never want to watch it again. But I hope you do, and I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, thanks to my dear friend Andy. Yeah, Andy's just made a good point that if you haven't watched the first 3 pro webinars at £4 a time, I think they're incredible value for money, although I say it myself. It would help you certainly with this webinar to have watched the other ones first. We look forward to your company in the future. We've had some good suggestions of what to cover in future pro webinars, and we've got lots more free webinars coming up. And again, if you subscribe to the magazine, the dates are in there. If you don't worry, because we will keep you informed by email. So all that remains is to say thank you, as always, and we look forward to your company at the next pro webinar. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.